Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome into Smite 2 Long Didn't Watch, your one-stop shop for all things Smite 2 Founder Series as we continue down the road to Vegas. My name's Gormizer, joining me are Shelly and J-Mac, and we are going to be covering kind of a whole lot today, actually. If you missed it, the last time I guess we did like a broadcast really was right before Thanksgiving here in the States. Where we qualified 3 teams from NA and 3 teams from EMEA and sent them straight forward to a land that's, I don't know, it's happening sometime soon, in the next couple of days or anything like that. So we got 6 teams there. We're adding 2 teams from LATAM. But it did kind of occur to me that we never actually recapped that part. So first things first, we're gonna, I think, break into the 3 teams from each of those regions. Then a little bit later we'll talk about the LATAM teams that are coming, which we talked about a couple weeks ago with Malum, and then talk about the groups, talk about land, maybe a prediction or two. We'll figure out where that's going to go. We normally start EMEA, right?
That is true. Yes.
That's
I think we usually start like something like that.
I'm trying to get the synapses fired. And Shelly, if I remember correctly, you're doing NA, so it'll be the other guy who's doing EMEA. J-Mac, tell me about these teams who qualified.
So as far as the teams that qualified through, Team Risk, Mockingbird, and Smokebreak are your 3 teams from EMEA. And I think among those ones, absolutely no surprise that Team Risk is there. Probably no real surprise that Smokebreak is there. I think that Mockingbird being the 3rd team that popped in technically is the 2nd seed of them. But I think that Mockingbird being the 3rd team that popped in here is a little bit of a surprise, but not entirely, because this is one of those teams that we've been kind of talking about for a while, where they're right there. And like that, like we knew like the number 1, we knew kind of like the number 2, number 3, and then like Mockingbird was always in the conversation of like the 4 and 5, but could break into that 2nd or 3rd spot depending on how things break down for them. And it ended up doing pretty well for themselves over the course of, the entire thing. It was a 2-week event that happened for those playoffs. And for Mockingbird, their path was, I'm not going to say an easy one for it, but it's also a bit of a difficult one at the same time. Mockingbird had to start out the event by playing against Project Win. Pretty convincing 2-0 on that part. Then they had to play against DDK, Disupelos Del Chaos. That one was still pretty convincing for Mockingbird. The real test that really comes down to them whenever you look at the bracket was the Bills Goons matchup, because Bills Goons is a team that actually really had the upset out of everybody. Giovanni Giorgio getting knocked down from the quarterfinals down to the losers bracket by Bills Goons was probably one of the bigger upsets of the entire event. And then with that, Mockingbird was able to kind of catapult themselves forward and find that win over Bills Goons. And then, unfortunately for them, they do lose to Team Risk in the finals, which puts them at their 2nd seed, but it gets them that spot there. For Team Risk, their path, they started off pretty easy for themselves, being that number 1 seed. They got to have themselves a little bit of an early start, a little bit of an early break, and immediately in quarterfinals has to go against Smokebreak. Then Smokebreak then themselves have to make a run all the way from losers round 2 straight through to the losers finals and ended up getting a win over Giovanni Giorgio. Where Team Risk, they were able to 2-0 their way all the way through at the top end. And it was really funny, when we looked at the post-game interview, whenever these teams qualified, we got to talk to them a little bit. And I remember specifically, I talked to Deathwalker. I think it was you and me, or me and I think it was me and Trelly on that one. And I asked Deathwalker, I said, when you came into this bracket, were you expecting, to be the number 1 seed to come out of here, to be able to beat Team Risk? And he straight up said, no, I don't think that we were beating Team Risk. I don't know who's beating them. But he did say once that he realized that it was a best of 3 down in the lower bracket, he was set. Like, okay, cool. We lose to Team Risk. We've got it from the rest of the way here. And he said the team was also really excited to be able to find themselves a win. And I believe he had said it was his mid laner was the first time that he was able to get into a LAN. So now we have SAP7 for the first time out here in LAN. And with these teams, Team Risk, I think the biggest thing that really I kind of want to talk about with these 3 teams coming out to the LAN is kind of how they looked in their playoffs and maybe how they'll look once we get to this kind of LAN setting. Team Risk, they're the definitive number 1 team. And I think that's of both regions right now, because previously them and kind of Cowabunga were the discussion. Cowabunga gets knocked out, and it's no longer kind of the clean North American side. Whereas in EMEA, Team Risk has not dropped a set and has not dropped a game. They are 14-0 in sets and 22-0 in games. So coming into this LAN completely unscathed, if they're able to cleanly go through this event, get their quick wins in the group stages, get themselves their first seed, no problems there, they could be looking at a Las Vegas event where they're coming in completely undefeated. And if they can somehow sweep Las Vegas undefeated, first off, that would be an insanely impressive season for them.
Really crazy.
But it's also a really difficult path. When you look at the other two teams that have qualified, Smokebreak was a 14-5 for their full record. And you're probably sitting there going, okay, wait, hold on, 14-0, 14-5, something's not adding up here. When you get dropped down to a lower bracket or in the open, or like in the open bracket stage, or even in the Swiss stage specifically, if you didn't qualify immediately, you had more sets to play. So there was an extra set of Swiss over for Smokebreak, and there was plenty of extra sets down in the losers round for them as well in this tournament. So Smokebreak sitting at the 14-5 with a 22-11 record in their third seed, and then Mockingbird didn't have to play quite as many sets on themselves. They qualified out pretty early. I will say they had a difficult kind of open bracket start for them, which is where the hesitation for this team came from, was their open bracket wasn't super hot, but the rest of their stuff was. I mean, they're obviously with their playoffs, they were able to get themselves 2-0s all the way until Smokebreak, where they get 0-2'd, and then with a 9-4 record for themselves. I think that these three rosters are really potent. I think the big thing that's going to be coming out here is who's going to beat Team Risk. So far, it hasn't been EMEA. Is there an NA or a LATAM team that can do it? Unsure. Mockingbird have upset a lot of the top teams throughout this phase, and even in the playoffs, they're able to upset some of the other top teams out there. So I think that Mockingbird has dark horse potential out of EMEA. But when we talk about teams that always show up on LAN, it's the players of Smokebreak, the big ones. Benko, Johnny, iSilence, eChrome. These are guys who came in at SMITE 1 SPL as a number 1, maybe number 2 SCC team. They get to LAN and they are toppling pro teams time and time again and making it to back-to-back world championships. These guys cannot be looked down upon when you come to a LAN style setting. And I think that this is really where they thrive the best, is in LAN. So I think my ultimate question, at least that'll come out of this one, is how is Smokebreak going to look on LAN? Does Mockingbird have that dark horse kind of upset potential? And most importantly, who is going to be able to finally put, I'm not even going to say as a set, who can finally take a game off of Team Risk in this event?
Yeah, you're really narrowing the scope down. It'll, in theory, should be easy, right? When we go forward to it, I'll just mention it now, but it's the first part of this is group round robin, right? So in theory, there's a chance to lose a single game somewhere in there. But like you said, they've had a chance to lose that the whole time, and they still haven't. So we'll keep an eye on Team Risk. It was actually funny you had mentioned it, because I think the 2 points you make about Smokebreak are both things like talking to Deathwalker at one point. He came out and he was like, yeah, I don't think we're going to win anything, but, it'll be fun. Like, he didn't even think they were going to make it to LAN this time around. And so knowing that they're there and kind of seeing them make that run through the lower bracket to qualify was actually really fun. And that leads into the second point that you made, and I think really well put, which is a lot of those guys have shown up at LAN more than anybody else. Like, it is a different level when they appear. And so maybe we'll see it this weekend. Maybe we'll end up seeing it at Vegas, but I'm expecting some surprises out of Smokebreak.
For sure.
Is there anything, I think, like, if you're rounding this up and kind of looking towards LAN, outside of Team Risk being untouchable, anything else you want to touch on?
I think honestly, it really is just don't underestimate Mockingbird. They've been able to take individual games off of some of these top teams. Maybe not big sets off of them, but they have been able to at least take games. And then Smokebreak always show up on LAN. So I think that that's something you really have to look out for. And who knows? Maybe we get the full suit squad. Deathwalker was talking about trying to get the whole team in suits this time for Smokebreak as opposed to just himself. We should hopefully at least see Suit Walker, though.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a treat in and of itself. Whether or not, it doesn't matter what happens at the LAN, we get Suit Walker, and that's what matters. But those are the three teams, right, from EMEA. So they get to join, again, we had talked about it, but Los Lille and Malvinas Gaming, which a few people, may remember. I think they've renamed because they have a sponsor coming into the LAN, which is awesome. So that would give us, math real fast, 5 teams, which means, JMac, we're still missing 3 of them to talk about. And that's where that other guy comes in, Trelly. North America, give me the breakdown. What happened? Who qualified?
Well, first of all, if you missed North America, you missed an absolute barn burner of a weekend. Upsets galore. Some matchups go the distance. Let's just talk about our 3 teams that made it. We got Team Namebot with 5 M's. They're gonna be your number 1 seed. Maybe a surprise, but hey, maybe Cowabunga lost in the finals, right? That could be the mindset here. Number 2, Food Drive for Globe is going to be your number 2, and then number 3, Borscht. We had a lot to talk about. We have a bracket here that you can go through and just kind of check it out. The main thing that I want to highlight here, of course, the fact that Cowabunga gets knocked out. But first, let's take a look at Borscht Path, because I think it's very interesting. Very bottom of your screen there in the winners bracket, they 2-0 Garf's Goblins. No surprise there. They get 2-1 by Scrumptious. Leading into this tournament, I don't think that would have been a surprise either. Borscht has been like a 4th seed team at best. No big deal there. You can see our semifinals also not that big of a shock. We got Cowabunga versus Food Drive for Globe, and we've got Team Name with 5M versus Scrumptious. The big shock there, of course, is the fact that Food Drive for Globe actually overtakes Cowabunga in the 2-1. That was a fantastic set. Food Drive for Globe is just a great team to get to watch, and they have improved so much since the start of this season. But then you go down. You got to follow Borscht Path. Remember, they lose in the quarterfinals. They have to face Look Within. They get a 2-0 victory there. They have to face Name in Progress. They get a 2-0 victory there. And then they get matched, worst case scenario, up against Cowabunga after losing to Food Drive for Globe. And I don't know where their headspace was. I don't know how much confidence they had. But at this point, we still thought Cowabunga was untouchable, right? Yeah, they lost to Food Drive for Globe, but these have been guys that have been on the come up for so long. We're like, okay, maybe they just understood the patch better. But then Borscht comes through and 2-1s Cowabunga, knocks the #1 seed out of the tournament. And you got to remember, I have been going over EMEA for a while. And I would say probably a month ago, I deemed that there were no teams worthy of beating Team Risk from EMEA. And I was like, we need Cowabunga. We need that matchup. And that matchup will never happen because Cowabunga will not be at this Las Vegas LAN. Borscht made absolute sure of that. And that's not even, the upsets are not finished, right? Scrumptious got 2-0 by Team Name with 5Ms. They get knocked down. They take on Kitty Party. Pretty good 2-0, no problem. And then they get 2-0'd by Borscht. Remember, Borscht already lost to them earlier on in the same tournament. They lost 2-1, so they just get absolutely swept there in the loser finals to go to LAN. Just a fantastic set to watch. So you guys should definitely go back and check it out on Smite VOD. Let's go over the teams that you're watching, though. Of course, we don't have any 14-0, 22-0 teams. That's not going to happen here. Your #1 seed, 13-2. 20-3 as far as games go. Still very respectable. The most complete team from NA is definitely still Team Name, but with 5Ms.
Yeah.
They have been very transparent. They stream their scrims. They show their strategy, and all in all, it has always looked very rock solid. It's a pleasure to get to watch these guys, and I think that Mike is definitely still a wrecking force when running this squad. Zeus wanted to be in the video. Then we got Food Drive for Globe. And you know what? I got to give Malamus flowers. He has been praising these guys for so long, talking about, I'm seeing the minor improvements here. I'm seeing them be able to lock in and just make these small little adjustments to get higher and higher placements every single weekend. I mean, making it to the finals here is not an easy task.
Yeah.
They are going to be an absolute threat. And I'm not sure if we're going to talk about the groups later, but I think they got a pretty solid group to try and perform in as well, as we will see. We have a couple kind of phases here going into this knockout LAN. So talk about that in a bit. And then we got Borscht. And Borscht, look at bro, what are you doing this?
Bro, he recognized that Zeus is going to be a pick that could dominate the weekend. He's like, all right, I'm going to show up.
Yeah, he's like, I want to be in here. That's fine. Borscht, I honestly, I will put my name down as one of the guys that definitely wrote them off. I thought that they didn't have enough experience, on the new patch. Maybe they weren't, because again, when you stream scrims, you get such an easier look into what these squads are able to do. But I haven't seen Pagon or Baskin in the ranked queues. I see Final K stream. Rat Milk is a rank grinder. He's always going to have those reps. But, I was like, okay, Rat Milk and Jake, they're the grinders. Final K is going to be live, but where's Pagon? Where's Baskin? That sort of thing. But, man, they brought it. It seems to me they came with a game plan for this tournament, and they were able to execute on it flawlessly, which you can kind of tell when teams come in with that mindset. And I may have a hot take here, but I think Borscht, this is out of anyone in the whole tournament, has the jungler with the most ability to pop off and hard carry a game. I'm talking over Scream. I'm talking over Lasbra. Like, I think Rat Milk has shown that if you give him an opening, he'll be the 12-0 guy at 9 minutes. Like he has that space. It doesn't mean it always happens. Of course, there's games where he can never get rolling. But I'm talking like spawn into the game. Who's gonna drop a god like this game? It's pretty fair to bet on Rat Milk if there is going to be one. So to pay attention to this guy. And also, he's one of the few people that are playing Thanatos. Like who else is playing Thanatos consistently? There are so many better jungle options, and bro just likes Thanatos. So it has been an absolute pleasure to watch. And also, that support mindset that people like Polar Bear Mike have popularized, Awesome Jake plays so well. Like it just seems like the meta that we are in with aggressive style supports where you can just W key and create space for your team. Active items help facilitate that. And Awesome Jake has always been someone who can sort of flex into more carry style support play. And these active items help that so much. The Xerxes Hexstone, like that kind of mindset, I think really facilitates through Jake. So these guys are going to be my dark horse to watch. I'm calling them a wild card on most days, but regardless, I think that they are going to be a fun team to watch. And of course, I gave my flowers to Food Drive for Glow, but these are guys that if you watch them at the beginning and then stopped watching their matches, go back, watch their performance in our qualifier games leading up to this LAN, because it's a night and day difference. They are looking lethal for sure.
I'm really excited to see, I think, a few of these teams, specifically like what you mentioned with Borscht, not just like, I think, pop-off potential, but like, I guess maybe play potential. Same thing goes with 5Ms and Food. I will admit, my brain looks at the names for Food Drive for Globe and like forgets how well they've played every single time.
Yeah.
And so they're definitely a team to keep my eye on. But I'm also really interested because one thing you had mentioned was, knowing the patch, right, that you're coming into.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to be playing on
CA7, I believe.
CA7, yeah. So there's, I think, a couple new gods in there. Again, barring, I think, like, Thor was up in the air for discussion. I'm not sure which side of the coin he ended up being on. But, a couple new gods that are in there, as well as a lot of those balance changes, right? So, like, you've had a couple weeks to play it. How well do you know it coming into the weekend? Luckily, and you had kind of mentioned this, but with things being split into groups, maybe it's a little easier this weekend to make things work, and Vegas will be a completely different beast to try and tackle. But that's North America. That's EMEA. I'll mention these teams the last two that are coming, because we only have 6. We need 8. I talked about them: Los Lille and Malvinas Gaming. If you didn't keep a track of LATAM a lot, or for some reason you just didn't watch those parts of Smite too long, didn't watch, first off, shame on you. You should go back and watch those, because it helps everything. Also, your understanding of everything. But the way it worked in LATAM was that Los Lille just kind of dominated everybody, man. Yep. I mean, they just won. I think the only week they didn't win was a week they played in the Brazil bracket instead of the LATAM bracket. And guess what? They won the Brazil bracket when they did it. So realistically, this is the team I think a lot of people have their eyes on coming into LAN from LATAM to have that upset potential. Malvinas Gaming was always just a little bit behind in terms of what they were able to do, but they were the ones that competed with them. If I remember correctly as well, they're scrim partners, which is really, really fun. I believe I just heard that we have like the teams that we can show up so you can see who exactly we're talking about. So this is Los Lille, and it was Malibu at the time. They've been sponsored by Malvinas Gaming coming into this, so you might recognize them a little bit more under the name Malibu, because that's what they played under up until they qualified for LAN. A lot of really, really interesting matchups. Also, a couple of things worth mentioning, which I think is going to be a couple of player changes, right? Just, getting visas coming here. So it's going to be not exactly the rosters they had, but still, I think, some insane powerhouses. But that's just LATAM. If we look at some of the other regions, North America and EMEA, you'll be able to see everybody else. Team name, but with 5 M's. Food Drive for Globe, Borscht, Team Risk, Mockingbird, Smoke Break. All these teams we've been talking about, of course, the players that have been mentioned. I still think it's crazy to see Pagon over in the duo lane, so that's something to look at. Rat Milk as well. Trelly had mentioned Scream. And that really Team name, but with 5 M's and Team Risk. I think from name power, if you were a Smite 1 enjoyer, you're probably leaning into them, but we mentioned Smoke Break, their potential to pop off at LAN. Rat Milk, as Trelly said, is a hot take, potentially the most hard carry jungler potential that there is. We'll just have to see if they can bring it. And of course, Food Drive for Globe, Mockingbird, 2 teams that have done a ton in their tenure in the Founder Series. and two teams that I'm really excited to see what they have to offer. So what did they qualify for and when? What are we looking at? Where are we going? And what does any of this really mean at the end of the day? Well, they have qualified for a LAN. This one not in Vegas, this one in studio, December 12th through the 15th. Which, if you're watching this, means it's either happening or it's happening real soon. This LAN is a little different format than what you maybe would have seen in the last few weeks, because a lot of it has been brackets. What we're going to be doing, and actually this is going to be perfect timing, we can look at the standings and the schedule because everything's split into two groups. The way things are going to work in these two groups is it's round robin. So everybody in this group, so this is Group A, Borscht, Malvinas Gaming, Mockingbird, and Team Name but with 5 M's. Those 4 teams are all going to play each other over the next, I guess 3 days, right? The 12th, the 13th, and the 14th. First off, we have a Friday the 13th in this as well. So let's, fingers crossed things go great. They are going to be playing each other. And while I discuss what matters in this, we can take a look at Group B as well, because they're going to be matching up. I believe one's in the morning. Yeah, Group B's in the afternoon. Food Drive for Globe, Los Leals, Smoke Break, and Team Risk are over here. And you can see, everybody plays everybody once. So what are we determining? How does this give us a winner? What does this mean? Where is this all going? The bottom team of each group, whoever's in 4th at the end of the Saturday for this, the 14th, is eliminated. They're gone. And we move forward with the other 6 teams. So whether that's, the teams that I think people are going to count out, LATAM, that typically gets counted out whenever we come to lands like this. Maybe, Mockingbird or Borscht or Smoke Break or Food Drive for Globe have an off weekend, right? Whoever's at the bottom, cut out. They're gone. And we move forward with only 6 teams. So that's where this round robin comes in. For a lot of these teams, spicy upsets could be happening any day of the week, and you've got plenty of opportunity to make it happen. And so I'm really excited to see that. But again, we'll move forward with the top 6, and that's where Sunday comes into the equation, where Sunday will be, I guess technically it's the first look, quote unquote, of the Vegas bracket, because we'll be playing round 1, match 1, and round 1, match 2, which if you look at the bracket for it, it's a 16 double elim. It's literally the first 2 matches of the bracket. And it's mainly just because Vegas is 3 days and we have to fit a double elim bracket into 3 days. And so those 2 will get played out on Sunday. We'll get a kind of a first look. It'll still be on LAN, but then none of the other matches will continue from that point forward until the 17th of January when we are on ground in Vegas on stage in front of the crowd. And that's where it gets really spicy because we'll already have some teams down there in the losers bracket kind of waiting. But we'll have to play out a whole ton of matches. I think it's going to be an absolute blast. So we can't really get into that because we don't even know who's going to be there. Mm-hmm. Instead, I'll rewind it a little bit to ask you guys, are there any teams that you think are going to particularly struggle to maybe qualify for the Vegas bracket? And I guess predictions as to who's eliminated, because that's way easier than naming 6 teams that are going to make it. J-Mac, you haven't spoken in a little bit, so we'll start with you.
So the important thing to also remember is that they are broken out into the groups. It was the first seeds from each of the events that drafted their opponents' groups. So 5M's drafted who is going to be in Team Risk group, and Team Risk drafted who is going to be in 5M's group. Really looking at this one, while I don't think that they're going to struggle to qualify, I do feel that in Group B, Food Drive for Globe has probably the tougher of the 2 groups because it is against 2 EMEA squads. And just historically speaking, over the last couple of years in competitive, EMEA has been the dominant region when it comes down to play. Then whenever we have the SCC kids versus other SCC, when we even had SCC versus SPL players, EMEA was always the region that was coming out on top. So for Food Drive for Globe, this is probably their toughest set. Mm-hmm. Even if they get into just a 3rd seed spot for themselves, that's still fine. But this is going to probably be their toughest group over anything else. But I would think just overall in general, because we have maybe less intel on them versus some of these more kind of potent names and teams, I think that both the LATAM squads have a lot to prove and a lot to show in this one. I know that for the sewer crew that was kind of doing a lot of the broadcasting for them, shout out D'Lo and all of his crew, they've been hyping these two squads up a lot. So I think there's at least some expectations there from D'Lo and the crew to see what these guys can do. And I'm excited to see it, but it's going to be a really tough matchup because EMEA and NA have both been stacked all the way throughout this event. So there's a lot for these two teams to prove. But if we're just talking for the non-LATAM teams, I would definitely put Food Drive for Globe as like my team that's going to struggle the most in their particular group.
And Charlie, what about you? Do you have anybody that you're looking for? Do you think LATAM has the upset potential, or do you think that it's going to be kind of a struggle bus?
No, absolutely. They definitely have upset potential. I've been watching Los Lille. I'm not going to lie. Malvinus Gaming definitely has, a ladder to climb, but that's going to be in every event. But Los Lille, man, they are absolute powerhouses for sure. And I've seen the amount of willingness to just grind new patches, which I think is what you need. You need that X factor in a tournament like this when the game is constantly shifting. And look no further than teams like Cowabungas, where it looked like they didn't quite understand how the meta was changing when it led up to a big weekend. This is kind of the same thing for me. The guys that you see consistently slamming the new Qs and just learning like, oh, this guy does this now. Oh, this item is actually kind of strong. You get a better feel. You can read it all you want, but trying it out and actually playing against it, playing with those changes is what makes the difference. And these are guys that are going to get their hands dirty. They're going to make sure they know the patch inside and out leading up to a big event like this. So I'm not counting them out one bit. They are up against Team Risk, which, when you got an undefeated squad like that, you have to be worrisome. But, I tend to agree with J-Mac. I think Food Drive for Globe has proven that they're in that same boat, though. They are grinders as well. I think Smoke Break might actually be in for a tough group in group letter B. But as far as Group A goes, I really want to watch Borscht take on a team like Mockingbird. I think that would be quite interesting. Even 5Ms versus Mockingbird, I think will be quite interesting. There's just a lot of good matchups to watch, and the beauty of a round robin bracket is we get to watch all of them. So it should be some exciting stuff.
I didn't mention it mainly because I legitimately just forgot until right now. But it is also worth mentioning that the glory of being first seed a couple weeks ago, so for 5Ms and Team Risk, was drafting your opponent's group.
Right.
And so like Group B being harder is like 5M's design, right? Or quote unquote harder, right? Is designed that way, and seeing what that's going to be able to do. Having, Los Lille, Food Drive for Globe, Smoke Break over there is definitely, I think, a good decision by them. It'll make their lives maybe a little easier, but Borscht, Malvinas, and Mockingbird don't necessarily scream, this is free to me. So it's going to be a really interesting one. This is a friendly reminder, depending on when you're watching this, whenever you're watching this, we're going live at 11 a.m. Eastern every single day, except for the Sunday, the 15th. That's going to be at 1 p.m. But 11 a.m. Eastern, December 12th, 13th, and 14th with the knockout stage, and 1 p.m. on December 15th, where we are going to kind of eliminate, and well, I guess eliminates the really, really, really bad word choice. We're going to take the first steps in the Vegas bracket as we move forward. But it is going to be a lot of action-packed Smite, round robin, best of threes, 4 best of threes Thursday, 4 best of threes on Friday. Guess what? 4 best of threes on Saturday, and then just 2 best of threes on Sunday, waiting before we go on, a little holiday break as we prep and get everything ready for Vegas the 17th or 19th of January. So make sure you are tuning in wherever you are. You can find us on Twitch, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us all across the internet. Make sure that you're following our socials at SMITEPro. If words wasn't enough, if you're a visual person and the brackets maybe didn't cover it for you, you should go to smiteesports.com. There's a Knockout Land Everything You Need to Know blog. There's team blogs that how they got here, both for EMEA, NA, and for LATAM. If you go to the website, I've actually been looking at it the entire time. If you click on the standings bracket tab, there's a beautiful thing that's got all 8 of the teams in their rosters. It's got the groups, as well as the schedules that they're going to be going through, as well as you can scroll down and you'll see the Vegas bracket that's there. So a lot of helpful information there at smiteesports.com. Now I got to go through a mental checklist to make sure that I did everything for housekeeping. I think I did. Just make sure that you're playing. Of course, get your Founders Pack while you can if you want to get in to play Smite 2. If not, just make sure you're tuning in, hanging out, watching, and having a lot of fun. But from myself, from J-Mac, from Shelly, from everyone back in production, everyone here at Hi-Res Studios, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you here during the Knockout Land.